Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Rosenfarb from Beth Messiah Synagogue in Tidewater, and coming to you here from my home, actually. And so I just want to, again, study with you the book of Acts through Jewish eyes. We are in chapter 21, and I'll start in just a moment. Just wanted to tell you, we'd love to see you at Beth Messiah. Saturday at 10:30 is our service. And it's going to be a great one. So please come. And we are meeting right now at, I think it's 11:35 Surrey Crescent, if I'm not mistaken. So anyhow, come and join us there if you would, Saturday morning at 10:30. And our address right now is 131 Forsyth Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23505. Telephone number is 757-423-3440. And anyhow, let's continue in this study. Rabbi Saul is in Ephesus, and he's ready to leave Ephesus. And we can see in Acts chapter 20, verses 36 to 38, that there is a lot of emotion wrapped up here. And so there's this very, very big a moment of grieving, really. They hate to see him go, but he's on his way. He's going to Jerusalem. And so just a couple of things to observe. The way that this journey to Jerusalem is structured is interesting, because it roughly parallels Yeshua's life and his journey. First of all, we have a similar plot against Yeshua and Rabbi Saul by the Judeans. There's a handing over to the Gentiles in verse 11 here. There's a triple prediction on the way of the coming suffering, and we are going to see that in verses. Well, we see it already in chapter 20, verses 22 to 24, 21, 4, and 10 through 11. 4, we see a steadfast resolution, just like Yeshua set his face like a flint towards Jerusalem. Paul is determined to go towards Jerusalem. And in 5, there is a divine resignation to God's will in verse 14. And so we really, I think this parallelism is purposeful, because it alludes to the fact that as Yeshua is the suffering servant, so his disciples, specifically the example of Rabbi Saul, is going to journey to Jerusalem in terms that are reminiscent of the servant of the Lord, the suffering servant, that we read in the servant songs, especially in Isaiah 53. So that can't be by accident. So we'll start our journey here, chapter 21, verses 1 through 2. Pardon me. All right. After we had torn ourselves away from them, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in this, the way that the Greek grammar, even the English also says it, but Greek grammar is construed. There's an strong emotional component to this thing. After we had torn ourselves away from them, we put out to sea and sailed straight to Kos. The next day we went to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. We found a ship crossing over to Phoenicia, went on board, and set sail. So we see this beautiful port, part of the past glory, that still, in fact, exists. It exists in Rhodes today. If you go there, you'll see it's a beautiful port. Patara is a Lycian city. It's on the southwest coast of Asia Minor, which is Turkey. Large commercial city with a fine harbor. Favorite port of call for large ships, because of course a deep port. And these large ships would travel typically between the Mediterranean ports of Syria Israel and Egypt and the Aegean ports of Asia, Macedonia, Hira. So Paul and his party, board a large merchant ship that's bound nonstop for Tyre, for they desired to travel quickly. Now, verse 3, after sighting Cyprus and passing to the south of it, we sailed on to Syria. We landed at Tyre, where our ship was to unload its cargo. So this is a trip from Patara to Tyre, 400 miles. It's no small trip. So it's a major trip. The Phoenician seaport of Syria is famous. So they passed by Cyprus. John Chrysostom, one of the early church fathers, says that such a journey would have taken 5 days. I guess it's possible, like any other guess, right? Depending on the wind and the calm of the sea, so forth. Verse 4, finding the disciples there, we stayed with them 7 days. Through the Spirit, they urged Rabbi Saul not to go on to Jerusalem. Now, in the past, we have discussed this idea in the Spirit, and diatou pneumaticos is clearly in the Spirit, not in us spirit, not in their spirit, right? It's not in the spirit of them. This is through the Holy Spirit. And so this causes a dilemma for us. Just thinking about it, maybe you see that dilemma. So the Spirit is ordering that Rabbi Saul should not continue with his plans. And in that case, what does he do? If he follows on, it sounds like it's disobedience to the Spirit. Or maybe Rabbi Saul doubted the inspiration of these Tyrian believers. Some scholars believe that he just didn't have confidence in the word that was coming forth. Or it could be, and I'll give you my opinion, that the preposition dia, which normally means through the Spirit, through means that the Spirit's message was the occasion for the believer's concern rather than trying to dissuade Rabbi Saul. The Spirit was telling them, of what was going to happen. And so their interpretation was to say he should not go to Jerusalem because look what is going to happen. And so my feeling is that it's this third one, that the Spirit of God clearly was showing that this would be a dangerous journey, lots of trepidation, and they interpret this as the Spirit is saying you should not go, and Paul is saying, no, that's not what this means. It means this is what's going to happen, and I am willing for this to happen. Just like Yeshua said, nevertheless, not my will, but yours. This follows the same parallelism that we just talked about. Paul's willingness to follow on, despite the cost, going on to Jerusalem as God led him. Verse 5 and 6. But when our time was up, we left and continued on our way. Let's see, I'm going to open up this chat thing here. Okay. Shalom there. Okay. Somebody joined us here. And so this gives you a chance to chat, and maybe I can answer any questions, or I can repeat a comment and maybe an insight or something like that you have. But feel free to give us a chat here, and it'll appear on my screen. All right. So when the time was over, we left and continued on our way. All of the disciples and their wives and children accompanied us out of the children. So there's really a community connection here. And here on the beach, we knelt to pray. And after saying goodbye to each other, we went aboard the ship, and they returned home. This is reminiscent, isn't it, of the Ephesian elders in chapter 20. So Rabbi Saul and his companions leave them, and he sails from Tyre. We continued our voyage from Tyre, verse 7, and landed at Ptolemais, where we greeted the brothers and stayed with them for a day. So leaving the next day, we reached Caesarea and stayed at the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the seven. He had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. And so Caesarea is about 30 miles or so from Ptolemais. Paul and his companions have crossed the Mediterranean, and instead of walking to Caesarea, they stayed with Philip, the evangelist. This is not the apostle Philip, one of the 7 who had been appointed in the early days of Jerusalem, the Jerusalem congregation. You remember there was this controversy that the elders had not been taking care of the widows of the Hellenistic Jews. So they were ordered to they were ordained to take care of that daily distribution of food. That's way back in Acts chapter 6, if you recall. He had turned many to Yeshua in Samaria, and here he is. He stays there a number of days, and they wanted to be in Jerusalem, it looks like on the day of Shavuot, the day of Pentecost, chapter 20, verse 16. Not just to get there as early as possible, but to arrive at what would be a strategic moment. So he's looking at this place where you probably got over 1 million people coming to Jerusalem. And it is also a perfect time for him to be able to offer up the sacrifices necessary to release him from the Nazarite vow. Luke tells us that this particular Philip had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. He doesn't say anything about what they prophesied. So we're left to wonder about that. Eusebius talks about Philip and his daughters, that they eventually moved to Egypt, to Asia, and that his daughters provided in volumes the daily information on the Jerusalem congregation. For Papias, the author of 5 books, which we don't have anymore, on this is in Eusebius's ecclesiastical history. If you recall, Eusebius was the historian for Constantine, and the book is entitled Our Lord's Sayings. So we don't have them anymore, but clearly the daughters provided the information to Papias, one of the early fathers, for those volumes. Verse 10 through 14, chapter 21. After we had been there a number of days, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. Coming over to us, he took Rabbi Saul's belt, tied his own hands and feet with it, and said, "The Holy Spirit says, in this way the Judeans of Jerusalem will bind the owner of this belt and will hand him over to the Gentiles." Again, this parallelism between his life and Yeshua's life. When he heard this, this is happening again, right? Don't go. We and the people there pleaded with Rabbi Saul not to go to Jerusalem. Then Rabbi Saul answered, "Why are you weeping and breaking my heart? I am not ready only to be bound, but also to die in Jerusalem for the name of Adonai Yeshua." And when he would not be dissuaded, we gave him up. And he said, the Lord's will be done. So they have gotten this prophetic word, just like before, of what would happen to him. But it doesn't make any difference to him. He's bound to do the will of God. And so he's bound to go. They didn't want him to go because they didn't want these things to happen. Just like Peter, remember when he said to Yeshua, "Oh, no. We're not going to let this happen to you," And then Yeshua turned to him. He said, "Get thee hence, Satan." Right? You don't know what spirit you're of, Peter. I have to do this. This is what I was born for. I have to do this. Of course, that would be a human response, wouldn't it? Very much a human response for people to want him to live, to want him to stay with him. All right. So he knew that Rabbi Saul knew that the reception in Jerusalem might be less than cordial. This is found explicitly in Romans 15. He learned of the dangers. His friends naturally tried to dissuade him, but he's ready to go. 21:15 through 16. After this, we got ready and went up to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples from Caesarea accompanied us and brought us to the home of Nason, where we were to stay. He was a man from Cyprus and one of the early disciples. So he's on this little caravan journey from Caesarea to Jerusalem, about 65 miles southeast here. So they bring him to this fellow. Nason means in Greek remembering, i.e., remembering the early days of the believing body of Messiah. He's a disciple of Yeshua right from the beginning of the Jerusalem Kehillah. And now he arrives in Jerusalem in chapter 21, verses 17 to 26. When we arrived in Jerusalem, the brothers received us warmly. The next day, Rabbi Saul and the rest of us went to see James and all the elders that were present. Of course, his ministry was sanctioned by James and what would be a Sanhedrin, a Messianic Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. And so he would naturally, when he came back, go to them. So we went to James, Rabbi Saul and the rest of them. And he obviously, in verse 19, Rabbi Saul greeted them and reported in detail what God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. Of course, it's more of the same, isn't it? Just like in Acts chapter 15. A tremendous story of the Gentiles receiving the good news of Yeshua, the Messiah. And so, again, it's just a continuation, an expansion, if you will, of what he reported earlier. Now, keep in mind, he's bringing monies from non-Jewish converts to the new way. And so knowing the rigidity of the Messianic Jews who were more Pharisaic in their practice, if you will, he probably did not know how they would receive the monies. Would they receive the money from these Hellenistic people, both Hellenistic Jews and Hellenes, Gentiles and Hellenistic Jews? What would be their response? So he's moving in caution. Remember that the Messianic community in Jerusalem, especially, was being caught between their allegiance to the nation of Israel and to that mission to spread the good news of Yeshua both to Jews and to Gentiles, and telling the Gentiles that they did not need to convert to Judaism in order to receive the salvation and the promise of the Holy Spirit. So that dialogue has now gone on for some time in Jerusalem while Paul is away. And Paul has got to be quite aware that there's going to be some strain, right? So to accept a contribution from the Gentile believing body was maybe something that could actually drive a wedge between their mission and the what their fellow Messianic Jews were experiencing there in Jerusalem. So you know that heading towards the rebellion, the revolution of 70 CE, that date varies a couple of years hither and yon, but let's just say 70 CE, that a growing nationalism had been taking place more and more and more and more, and a large number of Essenes had come to faith, and the Essenes were looking for that great apocalyptic war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. And they were kind of pushing that particular agenda, and would probably have migrated to maybe more stringent adherence to the Mosaic covenant. So undoubtedly, Rabbi Saul knows this. Now we have the opposite problems in our era, so it's hard for us to understand the incredible drive and tensions that would exist there as Rabbi Saul was coming back. So the question was: are James and the elders, are they going to, for the sake of Jewish relations, are they going to be constrained to reject the contribution, and therefore, in a sense, reject these Gentile believers outside of Israel, and then there'd be a division in the body of Messiah, which would be contrary to Yeshua's whole heart and plan, and to the heart of the Tanakh. But how is this to be avoided? How would this spell disaster? So, you'd think, well, money for believers in Jerusalem, of course, they're going to accept it readily. Not necessarily, okay? Because you have this. Oh, look, you accept. You have this faith. You accept monies from the Gentiles. And that's your motivation, and you've exceeded. You can tell all kinds of stories could ensue of that nature. So how could he explain this to the Gentiles who gave the money? How could he convince? Would he need to convince the Judean Messianics that this was proper? All right. So there's a very human situation. They notice, but the response is quite different. In 21:20 to 24, when they heard this, they praised God. Then they said to Rabbi Saul, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Jews have believed." This brings up the issue. They praised God for everything, but they said, how many, look, thousands of Jews that have believed, and all of them are zealous for the Torah. You've been informed that you teach all of the Jews who live among the Gentiles to turn away from Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or live according to our customs. What shall we do? They will certainly hear that you have come, right? So what do we tell? You? There are 4 men with us who have made a vow, i.e., just like you, Nazarites. Take these men, join in their purification rites, and pay their expenses. What expenses? For the sacrifices required to disavow the Nazarite vow, which could only be done in Jerusalem. Take these men, join in their purification rites, and pay their expenses so they can have their heads shaved. As we suspected, Nazarite vow, just like Rabbi Saul. Then everybody will know there is no truth in these reports about you, but that you yourself are living in obedience to the Torah. We can accept this contribution openly, and we also want to protect our relationship with our nation and ministry that would be in jeopardy otherwise. We want to maintain that ministry, maintain that relationship. We want to praise God for what is happening among the Gentiles. We want to receive your gift gladly, but we also want our people to understand that though you have ministered among the Gentiles, knowing that full well that Paul's method was to go to the Jewish people first, and then to the Gentiles. But knowing that people would say there's nothing to fear. He is not trying to take our people away from the Torah. He is not teaching things contrary to God. So, Paul would have seen this as okay. As for the Gentile believers, 21 to 25, we have written to them our decisions that they should abstain. They already did this in Acts chapter 15. He knows about this. To abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, and from meat strangled, strangled animals, and from sexual immorality. Okay, so basically, they're reiterating. Look, we've already given a description to the Gentiles to live morally and ethically, and which apparently was not that uncommon in those days. Although there's some question, and I question it myself, as to whether the Noahide commands, the 7 commands to Gentiles, was formalized at this time or not. I don't happen to believe it was. Others believe it was, but I think that came later, not too much later, but later in Jewish history. So the next day, verse 26, Rabbi Saul took the men and purified himself along with them. Then he went to the temple to give notice of the date when the days of purification would end and the offering would be made for each of them. Okay, he pays for that, right? This is common to get a patron, especially if you couldn't afford it yourself, a patron to pay for the sacrifices. And the dates have to be given, everything has to be recorded and in order so you can be released, in fact, from the vow. All right. So, yeah. If you want to read about this, you can. The Encyclopedia Judaica. You can read it online. Nazir is a Talmudic tractate that's available in English. It's not Talmudic portions are not that easy to read, but you can generally follow the line of just generally. I'm saying line of reasoning in the tractate of Nazir, Nazir. It's available online in English. So he's going to be absolved, just like the others are going to be absolved. By the way, in Josephus, we see, in fact, that to pay for the charges for Nazarite offerings was considered an act of piety and a symbol of identification with the Jewish people. So this is not explicitly mentioned by Luke, probably because it was just simply well known among Jews, right? No need to say something that was obvious to people necessarily. And he didn't feel like he needed to make the extra effort for as Luke doesn't. We've already said this before. He's not that detailed a writer. He moves the story along, gets his point across, has literary gimmicks, if you will, to give meaning to his text. A beautiful writer, but limited in terms of the detail. All right. So, okay. Okay. Yeah. 2130. The whole city was aroused, and the people came running from all. Oh, wait a minute. Did I miss something here? Yeah, I just it didn't seem right. 21, 27 to 29. When the 7 days were nearly over, that's 7 days to be absolved from the vow. Sometimes that's extended to 30 days. Here it remains at 7 days. Some of the Judeans from the province of Asia saw Rabbi Saul in the temple. Of course, they would be there for the festival of Shavuot. They stirred up the whole crowd and seized them, shouting, "Men of Israel, help us! This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against our people and our law and this place. And besides, he has brought Greeks, okay, the Greeks into the temple area and defiled this holy place. They had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian in the city where Rabbi Saul was, and assumed that Rabbi Saul had brought him into the temple area. Now you know that probably that there was a gigantic sign between where the Gentiles worshipped and the Jews worshipped, you're not to enter on pain of death. So it was serious. No foreigner is to enter within the embankment around the sanctuary. Whoever's caught will have himself to blame for his death, which follows. So it was rather severe. Now they assumed this, but really it's an absurdity. Anybody that would go through the trouble of dissolving the Nazarite, of one making a Nazarite vow to begin with, and second of all, going through the entire expense and time and effort to absolve himself and others, and to pay for them, an act of piety and identification with the Jewish people. Anybody that would do this would never blatantly flout such an important Jewish law. I mean, it's an absurd thing. So the assumption is absurd. One wonders if it was, in fact, just simply a blatant lie to stir things up against them. So now, verse 30, this is of course a hyperbole. Not every single person is mentioned, but it's a large number. The whole city, verse 30, was aroused, and people came running from all directions. Of course, anybody that would violate that particular law didn't have a chance. Seizing Rabbi Saul, they dragged him from the temple, and immediately the gates were shut. Right? So committing this kind of thing would be a capital offense. Now, it was during the reign of Aristobulus, a puppet king of Israel, that Rome took away the right of the Sanhedrin to adjudicate in capital offenses. And it is said of that time that the Sanhedrin no longer met in the Hall of Hewn Stones. That was a special judgment hall made of beautiful marble, just gorgeous architecture. And that's where they adjudicated the capital offenses. Now, sidebar, Genesis 49:10 suggests that if the adjudication is taken away from Judah, then the one called Shiloh, he to whom it belongs, the Messiah, the Targum is the Aramaic version of the Hebrew Bible. The Targum makes it very explicit and puts in there the Messiah until the Messiah comes. In other words, if the adjudication of capital crimes has been taken away from Judah, the adjudicating body from Judah, then the Messiah must have come. You catch that? We have that in other places. In Daniel, if the temple is destroyed, then the Messiah would have had to come before There's a lot of these kinds of indicators that Messiah comes before something happens. Okay, so they drag it away, and they shut the gates, and so they want to kill this one who they think is worthy of death. Verses 31 to 32. Now, they didn't have the right. The Sanhedrin certainly didn't have the right, nor did anyone have the right to kill anyone, even on religious grounds, because that was taken away by Rome so as to minimize the effective role of the king in Israel. Verse 31 and 32, while they were trying to kill him, news reached the commander of the Roman troops that the whole city of Jerusalem was in an uproar. Now, you know the two things that you can't do. You can't start a ruckus, okay, because that usually ends up in forestalling tax payments and money going to Rome. And you can't come against Caesar. You can't claim a title or come against Caesar in some particular way. So this was the first one, causing a ruckus. So the commander of the Roman troops, that the whole city of Jerusalem was in an uproar. And he at once took some officers and soldiers and ran down to the crowd. When the rioters saw the commander and the soldiers, they stopped beating Rabbi Saul. Okay, so this is the commander of the cohort, and he rushes towards the mob, and he is yeah. This has nothing to do with the priesthood or the Sanhedrin. He is responsible to assure Rome that her interests would be served. Okay. Verse 33 to 36. The commander came up and arrested him and ordered him to be bound with two chains. Then he asked who he was and what he had done. Some in the crowd shouted one thing and some another. And since the commander could not get at the truth because of the uproar, he ordered that Rabbi Saul be taken into the barracks. When Rabbi Saul reached the steps, the violence of the crowd of the mob was so great he had to be carried by the soldiers. The crowd that followed kept shouting, "Away with him!" All right. So the commander formally arrests Rabbi Saul, and probably to protect him. He didn't really know what was going on. He thought he was some kind of a criminal, but nobody was able to declare what his actual crime was. All the commander knows is that they wanted him dead, right? Pardon me. So Rabbi Saul is going to be before the people. He's going to address the people. He's going to defend himself. And then the people are going to, in fact, respond. So verses 37 to 38. As the soldiers were about to take Rabbi Saul into the barracks, he asked the commander, "May I say something to you?" "Do you speak Greek?" he asked. "Aren't you the Egyptian who started a revolt and led 4,000 terrorists out into the desert some time ago?" So this had happened. This had actually happened and had been recorded. He said, "No." Where is that reference? Yeah, yeah. So yes, this is the Egyptian Jew was a 3 years earlier than this. He had appeared in Jerusalem claiming to be a prophet and had led a large band of followers into the wilderness and then to the Mount of Olives in preparation for the messianic overthrow of Jerusalem. Right? Josephus records this in Antiquities. Most people considered him a charlatan. All right, so Felix and his soldiers drove him off. It came to nothing. Yeshua said that false messiahs would come. Rabbi Saul answered in verse 39, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no ordinary city. Please let me speak to the people." Having received the commander's permission, because he was a Roman citizen, Rabbi Saul stood in the steps and mentioned to the crowd. When they were all very silent, he said to them in Aramaic, that was the lingua franca for the Jewish people of the day. Most people in commerce would speak Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek. Hebrew is the religious language, but it was spoken. All right, so he is. I'm not that guy. This is a Tarsus is an incredible city, right? It's not an ordinary city of the Greeks. It's a special city of the Greeks, and so the Roman commander was impressed, and he let him speak. So chapter 22, we go into chapter 22, verse 1 and 2. "Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense." When they heard him speak in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Then Saul said, he must have had a command presence. Some people do that, and he must have been one of those. So he opens his defense. Andres Adelphoi, men, brothers, and he adds Kai Pateras, and fathers, as Stephen did, by the way, in chapter 7, before the Sanhedrin, right? So this implies maybe that some of the members of the Sanhedrin, in fact, were present. All right, so this is a speech from the fortress of Antonia, and he's going to give an eloquent reply. "I am a Jew," verse 3, "born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel. Now, Gamaliel was such a big shot rabbi that he didn't even have the title rabbi. He had a title that was greater than a rabbi, Rabban. So to be a student of Rabban Gamaliel was really quite something. At the feet of Gamaliel, and notice at the feet of, in those days, the teachers taught students. The students would be in a semicircle in different rows, right? And if you were at the feet of the teacher, it meant you were in the front row, and only the front rowers received what we call samicha, ordination. So it's quite probable that Saul had received ordination. It didn't matter that he wasn't a rabbi of a town or a synagogue or something. Rabbis could be of a certain level of education, and this was developed later into 3 stages of ordination. But clearly, if he was Gamaliel's student, he was at the high. He could adjudicate anything, and so. Feet of Gamaliel, more or less, he was an ordained rabbi from Gamaliel in the front row. According to the strict manner of the Torah, of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God, as all of you are this day. So notice the 3 words here: upbringing, training, right? And from my youth. So it means that from the get-go, I was as zealous as any of you, even more so. If that's true, I'm not going to be very partial to breaking what it is that I've been zealous about. All right. His Jewishness cannot be disputed. His background is Jewish, not only Jewish, but Jewish, very Jewish, scholarly Jewish, Torah observant Jewish, whatever that meant in the day, right? And so I persecuted this way, the people of the way in Aramaic and Hebrew is halacha. And so halacha is your manner of life. It's not just rules and regulations. It means your citizenship, the way you behave, the way you live your life, the standards and mores of how you and why you live your life the way that you do. So I persecuted these people who had this halacha, right, to the death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women, as the high priest and the whole crowd of elders can bear witness. From them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed towards Damascus to take those also who are there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. So, what it is that you think I am, I persecuted, and I was the chief guy that they sent outside of Jerusalem, outside of the land, even to do this very, very thing. As I was on my way, verse 6, as I was on my way, I drew near to Damascus. About noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me. Now, I may have mentioned this before, but there were various feelings in those days about prophecy. Okay, the priestly caste, the Sadducees, didn't feel prophecy was necessary. Okay, we have the book of Leviticus, we have the ritual, all the apocalyptic things, prophetic literature. It wasn't necessary. It was there, but really we go by the temple cultus, adhering to the purity and the ritual of the temple, extending that into the home and into everyday life, and that's our righteousness really comes from that. The Essenes felt, well, let me talk about the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed in prophecy, but believed that prophecy essentially had stopped at the end of what we call the beginning of the intertestamental period. And so they felt that the only thing left was a shadow of that prophecy, a faint echo called the bat kol. right? The daughter of the voice. A bat kol could instruct, could declare, but true prophecy like Isaiah and Jeremiah, that had ended when the Lord departed from the temple, which the scripture says towards the end of or the beginning of what we call the intertestamental period. So there, that's what they believe. That's what the card carriers believe. The Essenes believe that prophecy never did end. They believed that the apocalypse, in fact, would come, and they believed that that prophecy was ever with us, and that we could hear true prophecy that was from God present day. Now, that saying that, everybody was quick to hear somebody that was deemed a prophet. Okay, even if you didn't believe that prophecy was anymore, everybody was kind of enamored, generally speaking, enamored. We know that because then there would be no intertestamental literature. Intertestamental literature is riddled with prophetic utterances and predictions and so forth and so on. And notable people had been raised up in the second and first centuries BCE with prophetic giftings. So, regardless of how people were stayed in their ways in these various sects, still at the everyday level, who wouldn't want to hear? Okay, whatever this prophetic way was. So Paul now is going to give forward something supernatural, something prophetic, supernatural, and in hopes to capture people's imagination that this has happened in our history. This happened in the scriptures. It still happens. So on the road, when I journeyed towards Damascus to take those who were there, bring them in bonds to Jerusalem. As I was on my way, I drew near to Damascus. About noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me. And I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Yeshua of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Now, these who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And this is, of course, the road to Damascus, and we see it early on in Acts chapter 9. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Rise and go to Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me and came into Damascus. So we see the bright light blinded Paul for a time, right? So what shall I do, right? Verse 12, and one, Ananias, a devout man according to the Torah, according to the law, well spoken of by all the Judeans who live there, came to me and standing by me. So a credible Jew who's known by all of the people there. You can check this out yourself. He's accepted by the people. He's well thought of by the people. He wasn't some schlemiel, that I just made up. This is a real person who is credible in the sight of everybody who knows him. And he came to me and standing by me said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very hour, I received my sight and saw him. And he said, The God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one. Everybody knew who the righteous one was. To the Essenes, the righteous teacher was the messianic figure. The righteous one to the Pharisees is the Messiah. And to the Sadducees, the righteous one is the king priest, the messianic king priest, John Hyrcanus of earlier years, right? And to hear a voice from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him and everyone of what you have seen and heard. And now, why do you wait? Rise and be immersed and wash away your sins, calling on his name, on Yeshua's name. So this is within a Jewish matrix. Notice Paul couches this in the God of our fathers, the messianic title, the righteous one. Brother Saul, receive your sight. Coming from Ananias, somebody who's well known, somebody who's a credible person. When, in verse 17, I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw him saying unto me, make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over. Remember the young man who kept the garments? He wasn't mentioned there at Stephen's death, but it was Saul of Tarsus. I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him. And he said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. I think we're going to stop there and go on and read, and let's see their response, and maybe talk about what kind of response he got, and maybe why. Okay, so you can do your homework, and let's see what's going to transpire in the next verses and in the next chapter. Okay, we'll see you again next Wednesday evening. I hope you have a great 4th of July. What a great country we live in, the land of the free, the home of the brave. I feel that down in my kishkas. I just feel so privileged as an immigrant. And of course, I was only 9 years old when we came over here, but I'm an immigrant, Jewish immigrant from Europe. And what a privilege to be in a country like this, where so much is available to us, and we can live the life that we're living. And even, opportunity is always around the next corner for those who are less fortunate than us. And just a great country. It's a great time to live. I hope you feel that way as well. God bless you. Shalom, and we will see you Saturday. Okay.